Good evening, and thank you for tuning in to another edition of Bits and Pieces. My name is Bill Morse, and this time I thought we'd look at a video posted on YouTube of an interview between a presidential candidate and the people in the local barber shop. The presidential candidate is Robert F. Kennedy Jr., and I don't know where the barbershop is, but the name of the poster is Math Hoff. Math as in mathematics, Hoff as in Hoffman, Hoff. And it's about, I'd say 15, maybe 20 minutes of video, this interview. And I thought it was worth sharing because it was a very frank discussion. Some of what Robert F. Kennedy said resonated with me because, like other people, I find it hard to really believe in a democracy when you have an intelligence agency that is answerable to no one. And I'm speaking about the Central Intelligence Agency, the CIA, which since its inception, through the help of Harry Truman in 1947 signed into being the Central Intelligence Agency in light of the pending Cold War between our country and the Soviet Union. Cold War that blew over with the Soviet Union basically saying uncle, and under economic pressure broke up. And so now we have Russia, of course, and a number of other republics. So Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who was running for president, the son of Robert Kennedy, who he and his brother were assassinated. His brother John, the president, in 1963, and Bobby Kennedy, Robert F. Kennedy's father, assassinated in Los Angeles in 1968. So he's going to talk about redirecting the Central Intelligence Agency, the CIA. I remember in the late 70s when Jimmy Carter proposed reducing the budget, which no one knows what the budget is, but he wanted to exercise a little more control over the CIA because they were conducting their own foreign policy. No one voted for them. No one voted on their policies. Their policies are pretty much secret, but it is the American public that suffers from the fallout of some of these decisions when we wind up sending people over to fight in wars that are ill-advised and for which we really have no goal or benefit. But there are certain people, most notably the military-industrial complex, the arms dealers, that do profit from these wars. In my opinion, that's what's happening in the Ukraine. We seem to go from war to war. Many of us are old enough to remember the anguish over the Vietnam War. Then we had war in Iraq, war in Panama, war in Somalia, or military incursions, let's say, 20 years in Afghanistan, which basically was an armed camp. We took it from the Taliban. 20 years later, we gave it back to the Taliban, and this was after a cost of 2,400 lives. And roughly 1,600, 1,700 people came back amputees from roadside bombs and other battle skirmishes, for lack of a better word. So we're going to get into this right now, and I hope you find it interesting. If you believe that Robert F. Kennedy is a good choice for president, I just hope, seeing as he's got his sights on the CIA, that he remains safe and sound, so that if he is voted in, he makes it into the White House. Especially when you consider what happened to his father and his uncle, who paid dearly for having a view or a prerogative that was different from the Central Intelligence Agency and, by extension, the military-industrial complex. So, let's get into this.
Two questions. Who benefits and what can we as a people, and I know, people ask this question all the time, but what specifically can raise the awareness where the people in these neighborhoods, the people who are not in connection with the politicians, what can we do? What, on the ground level, I'm talking about from step one, whether it's pick up a phone or go to this website or stop supporting this, what exactly can we do to change?
People need to be educated. And Martin Luther King's time, he was educating people and saying, 45% of every paratrooper movement unit in Vietnam is black. And, today, if you're not a sports star or a rap star like yourselves or hip-hop stars, but living the easy life like yourselves,
Is that what this is? I missed it completely.
What is your choice if you're in this neighborhood? And I admire you so much because you told me that you never took a drug. And that coming from where you came from with all the challenges, that takes incredible character. That you are a man of immense character. So,
thank you.
It's true.
Yeah, it is, but thank you.
And so, what is available to a kid who wants to escape, this life? Well, if you're not an NBA athlete, and if you're not a hip-hop star, your main choice is the military. If you don't want to go into a gang, you go into the military because they're going to pay for your education, they're going to pay for your housing, they're going to give you a health care program. But the fix is that you got to go kill people. And that is going to cripple you.
Yeah, I have family members who kind of struggle with that. They've been in the military for years. They had to work these operations where when they come home, all they do is drink.
Yeah. And they've got, PTSD.
Yeah.
The same kind of drugs that these kids are looking to escape. These vets are coming home looking to escape. They don't want to think about what they just happened. Who's to blame? I think so many more presidential and candidates, period, across the map would get so much further if you would tell us this is the guy who made the decision to do X, Y, Z, A, B, and C, 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah.
Or these three guys. Like when you tell us about somebody putting a plan where it shouldn't be.
Right.
Or you tell us about somebody saying, hey, we're going to go do this war regardless of what you think. Or we're going to spend this money.
Falls under the category of
They. Right. Who's they? Who made the decision to say, hey, we're going to spend this much money on the Ukraine instead of feeding people who actually need it? Who's that guy or that girl or that group? Who is they?
It's called the military-industrial complex. And Dwight Eisenhower, who was the general in world, the commanding general of the Allied forces in World War II, then ran for president. And the day that he left office, January 17, 1961, my birthday, and I was in Washington. 3 days later, I'd watch my uncle take the oath of office. But Eisenhower made the most important speech probably now in American history, where he warned America that if we were not machine that we created would destroy our democracy, would subvert all of the institutions that we've created, would impoverish our country and turn us into a surveillance and security state. And my uncle, he actually tried to make peace with the Soviet Union, but the CIA thwarted him. Alan Dulles thwarted him. And my uncle comes in.
What was the guy's name?
Alan Dulles. He's the guy he was the big villain in American history. He's the guy who turned the CIA into this, machine for overthrowing democracies and turned it against the American people. And he was, even lied to my uncle about the Bay of Pigs. My uncle said, why are we going down? Because my uncle comes into office and they said, first thing you need to know is we're about to invade Cuba. It's a secret. We've trained 2,000 Cuban troops. They're armed, they're dangerous, and we're going to send them down and we're going to overthrow Castro. And we're going to need U.S. military support. And my uncle said, I'm not doing that. Why? He said, I don't like that Castro has a communist government, but that's Cuba's business. It's not American business. People can choose their own governments and experiment with them. And we don't have to like them, but we don't have the right to change them. And America's not going to, invade a little tiny country. That's a bad look and be a bully. And he said, Dulles and his Joint Chiefs said, well, don't worry, the troops are going to go over there, and you just need to carry the Navy, and then they'll do all the fighting. And my uncle said, well, Castro's got 200,000, an army of 200,000 men. How are these 2,000 men going to defeat that army? And he said, the CIA lied to him, and they said, we've infiltrated the army. We know that they're going to rise up and turn on Castro as soon as our men land. And my uncle said, well, you're not using the U.S. military. My uncle didn't want to send them, but the CIA said, if you keep these guys here, they're going to cause terrible trouble because they're armed and dangerous. And they're going to consider you a traitor, and they're going to cause a lot of trouble. So my uncle said, you're not going to use the U.S. military, so they got United Fruit, which owned all the sugar cane before Castro threw them out to give them boats to bring those men over. And the men died on the beach or were captured by Castro. And that's when my uncle said, I wanted to shatter the CIA in 1,000 pieces and scatter it to the winds. And my uncle then, the CIA wanted him to go into Laos, he refused. They wanted him to go to Vietnam, he refused. They wanted him to go to war in '62 with Russia. Instead, he made friends secretly with Khrushchev. They started corresponding with each other, and they both realized that they were surrounded by people who wanted them to go to war. And my uncle kept them out, but then my uncle's killed, almost certainly by the CIA and the military-industrial complex. My father then runs against them. He also gets killed, again, almost certainly by the CIA. The man who actually fired the shots that killed him was a CIA asset, a guy called Eugene Caesar. Lee Harvey Oswald, we now know, was a CIA asset.
Yeah.
And the military-industrial, and we went through all of these traumas. My father's death, Dr. King's death, Malcolm X's death, the Vietnam War, the 9/11, and COVID. Each one pushed us further down the road into a security state, into becoming more a possession of the military. When Mitch McConnell was asked about, why are we spending $113 billion in Ukraine? He said, he said, don't worry about it, because that money is not actually staying in Ukraine. It is going to military contractors. It's just going over, technically going to Ukraine, but we're actually just buying, going to General Dynamics and right. And he said, so it's all American companies, and that's good for our country.
Yeah. And that
is their rationale. And they're over there, they're killing Ukrainian kids, so nobody here is going to complain because nobody here is, we're watching the coffins come home.
Right.
And so it's the perfect war for the military. They get to, re-up their contracts, and those are the people who drive policy in Washington, D.C.
So is Mitch McConnell they?
He's part of them.
Okay.
Joe Biden is they.
Because when you
Joe
say
Biden is-
Joe Biden.
when you say the
is
military-industrial complex, I'm still looking for names. Like where my experience.
Victoria Nuland, Joe Biden, Anthony Blinken. Those are the people who are driving it.
Those three names.
Yeah, those three names.
Okay. So when you get in, Joe Biden will go. You'll fire the other guys. Is that?
Yeah, all of those. I will reorganize the CIA, and I'm gonna. We have 800 bases abroad. You know how many the Chinese have? 1.5. The Russians may have one. I don't know, but we have 800, and each one is just a platform for a new war. And the function of the CIA is to provide the military-industrial complex. My uncle discovered this with this pipeline of continual new wars, to fuel that, and that money is being paid by the American middle class. That's why we don't have a middle class left in this country.
Okay. So that's why we don't have a middle class in this country. Just a personal story. I grew up in a town that was wholly dependent economically on General Dynamics. General Dynamics Electric Boat Division. Electric Boat is a shipyard in Groton, Connecticut, on the Thames River across from New London. This is in Connecticut, where I grew up. And my father worked as a Navy civilian for the shipyard. I have two good friends, lifelong friends. One is now the mayor of New London. His father worked at Electric Boat. I have another friend who served on the school board in Dedham, Massachusetts. His father was in charge of transportation. Not only is the shipyard still functioning, thanks largely to Joe Courtney, who is the local congressman for Eastern Connecticut, but it's expanded. Kind of a interesting scenario, because they expanded to a site, a campus that was built largely with government subsidies for Pfizer on what used to be a linoleum mill that had burned conveniently and was leveled, and with federal and state money the site was cleaned up and offered to Pfizer, which is also across the river in Groton, Connecticut. So Pfizer stayed there for 5 years until the tax benefits ran out, and they would have to start paying real estate taxes to New London. And so they left. Fortunately, and this is because of the military-industrial complex having more needs insofar as submarines, and I am convinced that submarines are a viable platform for defense because they can be deployed allegedly secretly, silent running, undetected. They can move from place to place around the globe, and they are a missile launching platform. They can launch nuclear weapons. So that's kind of like the red button, the emergency switch, the red button that you hit with your hand. Those are the submarines that are our main line of defense. Everything else is kind of ancillary. It's kind of on the side, supporting one way or the other submissions. So anyway, were it not for this expansion into New London, after Pfizer left, New London would be sucking wind. and it would continue to shrink as a post-industrial city with a high concentration of poverty, and many people coming from places like the Dominican Republic, Haiti, Puerto Rico originally, without a skill set to actually enter the middle class. So I'm a product. I have benefited from this military-industrial complex. And so I think there's always a middle ground whereby you can keep our defense strong without going on mindless spending sprees to accommodate wars that keep popping up. And that I think is probably the biggest drawdown, or the biggest draw on our economy, on our livelihoods, is the amount of money going into the military to accommodate, as I said, these wars. We spent $750 billion, $750 billion on the military in 2022. By comparison, China spent $350 billion, roughly half of that amount, on their military. Russia, which has been painted in a very negative light by the media and also the current administration, spends about $250 billion, so a third of what we spend. And as was pointed out by Robert F. Kennedy Jr., they do not have bases. They have expanded into Crimea. They have expanded into Ukraine. And the rationale being that NATO was getting too close to their borders, and they wanted a neutral area for their own self-interest. So about $130 billion, and it does not really go to civilians who have suffered during these invasion campaigns, and it's going into the military-industrial complex. This is with money that we keep printing up, and as we print up more money, my humble opinion, without a gold standard to back up these printed bills, each of those printed bills over time will lose value, purchasing value, because we just keep printing them. They come out of the sky. So anyway, if you're interested in learning more about RFK Jr.'s presidential campaign, there are other videos from Math Hoff on YouTube, M-A-T-H, Hoff, H-O-F-F. Also, there's a website, obviously, that you can visit where you can learn more about Kennedy's positions on different issues. And that website is www.kennedy24.com. So we'll end there. I hope you found this thought-provoking. We're in deep waters here, and they're pretty choppy. But I think we'll come out of this a better country. This is a litmus test to show us where we need to address issues on many, many fronts, and that the status quo, regardless who's been president, regardless, needs to change. So this is Bill Morse wishing you a good evening, and I hope to see you again on a future program. God bless.
Your voice, your opinion, your community. Fact TV, free speech protected.